Hello there and welcome to Lies, Damn Lies and History, the series where we take a look at the plentiful examples of historical common knowledge that are misunderstandings, distortions or just downright fabrications. And trust me, so much of what people think they know about history is at least in part wrong. And where else to start but with Napoleon Bonaparte, for it was he who uttered this quote which got me thinking about common historical misconceptions and from whence they arise, and ultimately drove me to start this series itself. And yes, whilst there are so many agreed upon fables of history, I shall do all that I can to correct as many of them as possible in bite-sized chunks during the course of this series. Now, there are several things that people think they know about this 18th and 19th century military genius. 1, that his name was Napoleon Bonaparte, 2, that he was French, and 3, that he was really short. The only problem being that none of those things is actually true. Firstly, yes, his name was not Napoleon Bonaparte. His birth name was Napoleon Bonaparte, which was later Frenched up as he made his way through the French army. But in his early days, the French did not get along well with his odd-sounding name, with his commanding officer, General Dugommier, referring to him in dispatches as Citizen Bonaparte, as 2 separate names, in a letter to the French Revolutionary Government's Minister for War, commending Bonaparte for his bravery and brilliance during the siege of Toulon in 1793, when Napoleon was just 24 years old. And that misspelling of his name was very common during the early years of his rise to power. And the reason his birth name was so strange to the French leads us on to our second point. The fact is, he wasn't really French himself. His family were Italian in origin, hence Bonaparte, not Bonaparte. And apologies to the people of both France and Italy for those appalling pronunciations. But even so, his place of birth wasn't technically France either. Napoleon was born in Ajaccio on the island of Corsica on the 15th of August 1769, which, while it had been occupied by French forces 2 years before he was born, with France attempting to buy the island from the Italian city-state of Genoa, who had previously ruled Corsica, but technically the island would not be incorporated into the French state until 1789, when Napoleon was already 20 years of age. Now, this move did infer French citizenship upon the Bonaparte family. Nonetheless, it does not change the fact that the soon-to-be Emperor of the French was Italian by heritage and Corsican by birth. And finally, this whole thing about him being short is total bunk. Napoleon was 5 feet and 6 inches tall, or 171 centimetres if you want to get all metric about it, and 5 feet 6 was average height for a man of the time. Thus, the nonsense of the Napoleon complex is just utter drivel, in addition to the fact that no short person in history has ever said to themselves, "Wow, I really wish I was a lot taller. I know what I'll make up for it though, I'll just invade Russia instead." It's utter gibberish. Now, the reason that we think of Napoleon as having been short is because of one of the most successful propaganda campaigns in history, as mostly British, although certainly other nations got involved on the act too, newspaper cartoonists, satirists and propagandists decided to depict him as short in order to mock and deride him, and it certainly struck a chord in the public's imagination. Now, for all of the things that you could criticise Napoleon for, his height really wasn't one of them. But so successful was this campaign of distortion and misinformation that over 200 years later, people still think of him as very short, when really, he wasn't. So now you know better. And knowing is half the battle, if that battle in question is one against historical ignorance, which is the case in this series, which is handy. See you all next time.